Hey, what's going on, friend? It's me, Juan Pablo from 100% Finance. Welcome back to the next rendition in the coaching program. Now we're going to talk about wholesaling as well as creative financing. For this video, specifically about wholesaling real estate. So let's get into it. What is wholesaling real estate? That's a great question. Wholesaling is a term in which an end buyer, right? An end buyer and a seller connect. But guess what? You, being a wholesaler, get that middleman income. So that's what you do. You just connect the dots. You find someone who's motivated to sell the property, and you also find someone who's motivated to buy the property, and you make that middleman income, the spread, an assignment fee, in other words. So you get a property under contract with a motivated seller, and you assign your contract to an end buyer. An end buyer meaning someone who can be a flipper or a buy and hold investor like yours truly, like Juan Pablo. And they'll be willing to pay a fee for that. So for example, before we move forward, I'll give you a great example or scenario. Imagine you found a motivated seller named Sally. She just faced a divorce. She inherited a home that she does not want. She has no interest in being a landlord or real estate investor for that matter. Let's say she just got hired in California and she can't afford two housing payments in New York City and Los Angeles, so she wants to get rid of her New York City home, for example, right? Whatever the case may be, she's highly motivated. So that's what I mean by motivated. A person who's in a need to sell position, not I would like to sell, need to sell. Motivated, distressed person, okay? So this person has a property they do not want. Then they find you as a result of your marketing campaign. You sent them a yellow letter. They seen your sign, your bandit sign while they were driving and so forth. Or they heard about you through word of mouth that you're an investor, wholesaler, in other words. So you get in contact with Sally, this motivated seller, and you get the property under contract for $40,000. And you see an end buyer, let's say it's this guy, Juan Pablo, who says, okay, I like to work with wholesalers, which I do. And you present the deal to me in the following fashion. You say, hey, Juan Pablo, this deal requires about $20,000 in rehab, repair costs, okay, and renovations. But it could potentially be worth $100,000 based upon the comparables. Comparables are also known as comps. These are just recent prices of what the house sold for within the past 6 months. Just so you can compare and see. Before getting an appraisal done, you can see what the value would be if the house was sold on the market once it's fixed up and pretty. So you provide me with the comps, being a wholesaler, saying that, hey, the comps show the property will be worth about $100,000, if it's sold in the near future. So I may say, okay, all right, repairs is $20,000. After repair value, that's when the house is fixed up and pretty, is $100,000. Well, what's the purchase price? How much do I have to buy it off of you, wholesaler? Because I know the wholesaler is going to make a fee for finding this deal for me. So the wholesaler says, okay, well, I got under contract with Sally, the motivated seller, for $40,000. You know what, Juan Pablo? I'll sell it to you for $45,000. But of course, a wholesaler doesn't have to disclose their wholesale fee. They have to disclose what they bought it for, what they're selling it for. Generally, that's not the case. I'm just saying that just so I can further your understanding on what's really going on with the numbers. So you get the property under contract for $40,000 with the motivated seller named Sally. You assign it to the buy and hold investor named Juan Pablo for $45,000. So in that scenario, you made a profit of $5,000. So wholesaling is the most profitable per hour real estate investment strategy. And it does not require credit or cash in that scenario. Now you might be thinking, well, why would Juan Pablo do that deal with a wholesaler? Okay, I'll continue with the math. So if I got it under contract for $45,000, even though the wholesaler made a quick $5,000, and I had to put $20,000 in rehab repair costs, my all-in cost is $40,000 plus $20,000. That's $60,000. And let's say I had $5,000 for closing costs and miscellaneous expenses. So I'm $65,000 all in. But again, the property could be worth potentially $100,000. So that's a lot of equity at stake. So I might be interested in buying that property to flip it or even to buy and hold it if we analyze the cash flow, which we're not going to go into in this scenario because this video is simply about wholesaling. So I just want to give you an explanation of what wholesaling is. Now, these numbers seem a tad bit complicated. You're somewhat lost. That's perfectly fine. This video is for you to watch over and over again until you get it. All right, that's the same thing I do, and you hear me say this often. Brainwash yourself for success. So there's something you don't understand, go over it multiple times, and also check out our Facebook group, post your questions so that we can further your understanding, so we can answer all your questions using that platform on the Facebook group. I want to make sure you're taking full advantage of it. All right, so let's continue. So that's what wholesaling is in the gist of it, right? It's just basically you finding a property at a discount and you're assigning it. You're just assigning your rights to purchase it. Is there a license required? Like such as a real estate license? Is not required whatsoever. You're not buying properties listed on MLS. You're getting under contract as an investor, and then you're just assigning your contract to an end buyer. There's nothing illegal about that. I get that. I ask a lot. Is wholesaling illegal? No, not at all. Now, in regard to closing, may differ state by state, but that's another story. But as I mentioned earlier, wholesaling does not require any cash, meaning huge down payment money. That's what I mean by that. Of course, you got to spend a few bucks for marketing purposes. There's going to be some cash involved, but it's minuscule compared to a buy and hold investor. It's not like you have to come up with $20,000 or $40,000 to get started in a buy and hold strategy. You don't have to do that with wholesaling. You just need a few bucks, okay? And no credit. When you're assigning your contract, this motivated seller does not care if you have stellar credit. And the end buyer, meaning the flipper or the buy and hold investor, can care less about your credit worthiness either. So that's what I recommend getting started for you, investor. If you are in a situation where your credit might not be the prettiest, you don't get that Holly Berry credit yet, and you may not have substantial down payment funds, wholesaling is a great way to get started in real estate so you can start generating some revenue. So with wholesaling, it's not the same as buy and hold, so meaning it does not equal cash flow per se. Cash flow is income you receive on a consistent basis from your real estate holdings with little to none of your own work required. Okay? Because if you have cash flow, hopefully you have property management in place. But if you're managing the property yourself, getting started, which I do recommend, I manage my own properties. The first 30 units I manage myself. I do recommend that so you can get a gist of what's going on and reduce costs. But generally speaking, cash flow is income that's received on a consistent basis from your real estate holdings. With buy and hold strategy, that's cash flow. But with wholesaling, that's not cash flow. Why? Because if you don't kill, you don't eat. Okay? So if you're not closing on deals left and right, you're not getting more income from your real estate holdings if you're utilizing the wholesaling strategy. So just keep that in mind. There's nothing wrong with wholesaling. I have a ton of wholesaling friends. That's all they do. They do it as a self-employed person, meaning they're picking up the phone, they're mailing out the letters, they're doing the whole 9 yards. But I have other friends, some of you guys might have heard Magic Mike, we'll see some of his videos later. He actually runs his wholesaling operation as a business, where he has call centers, where he has VAs as a virtual assistants working for him, the whole 9 yards, okay? So we'll get into that later. All right, so no buy and hold, but it's no problem. You got to get your feet wet somehow, right? Again, there's always levels to this, okay? So don't get upset if you, I want to do buy and hold, I want $1 million in cash flow tomorrow. But if you don't have things to bring to the table that's of value, such as you have the FICO score or substantial down payment funds, then you will have to compromise somewhat and get started with wholesaling. But there's nothing wrong with that, okay? And if you do have cash and or capital, cash and or credit, I meant to say, you can still wholesale as well if you want additional revenue sources. I have a lot of friends who do that. They have a model. They might say, hey, I'm going to wholesale 3 deals and then buy and hold the 4th deal. I'm going to wholesale another three deals, buy and hold the 4th deal. And they just keep that process going. Because some people are adverse to debt. They believe in the 100% finance model, but they don't want to use financing, such as business funding and so forth, for down payment funds. But they would rather trade in their hours and do wholesaling. So that's what you have to bring to the table for wholesaling. The time, the business acumen, the know-how, the connections, networking, and so forth. You have to bring the time to the table. So if you're willing to bring the time to the table in wholesale, then you can use those proceeds that you obtain from your wholesaling deals and roll it over to your buy and hold strategy. So that's important as well. You just want to make sure that you being a real estate entrepreneur, you're always getting funds from many different sources. As I mentioned before, my goal is not to teach you one way to do 50 deals, but at least 50 ways to get one deal. So wholesaling is a way that you can get additional capital to reinvest to your buy and hold strategy. And that's what you want to do. Treat wholesaling as a business and get massive income, and then roll it over to real estate, which produces passive income. So your massive income finances your passive income. And wholesaling can be a great business job that you can do in your spare time to finance your down payment funds for the buy and hold strategy. Okay, so with wholesaling, if you say, hey, I do have the cash and the credit, Juan Pablo, but I'm really interested in quitting my 9 to 5 as quickly as possible. I want to get my first buy and hold deal finished by the end of this year. Plus, I also want to move forward with quitting my job within the next 5 years or less. I get that. Cool. That's the same approach I took. I said, you know what? I do have some cash and some credit available because I repaired my credit, which hopefully you've done so far. Check out our resource for credit repair. I apply for business funding. That's in our resources as well. So just check that out if you're interested in getting business funding. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to go straight into buy and hold strategy. I'm just going to leverage credit. I'm going to leverage debt. I'm going to leverage financing the 100% finance way so I can quit my job as quickly as possible, which I did in 4 years or less. Okay, so if you had that mindset and say, hey, I do have some cash, I do have some credit, I'm going straight into buy and hold, I don't need to know nothing about wholesaling, then if you want, you can skip this whole module on wholesaling. But beware, I may drop some jewels that apply to different aspects of your real estate investment strategy. So as I recommend, you can skip it, but I always recommend go through the program in its entirety at least twice before you take action. Even though I'm talking about wholesaling, you might say, I'm not interested. Just review it over twice just in case, okay? Because I don't want you to miss out on anything. Got it? Good. I just want to put that out there. So wholesaling is good. So my goal for you is wholesale 4 deals and buy and hold 1. Again, I said I had some friends who wholesale 3, then they buy and hold 1. But for you, buy and hold 4 deals so you can get your feet wet. You raise substantial profit from your wholesale and buy and hold 1. So meaning if you average, let's say $5,000 per wholesale deal, that's pretty much the typical wholesale amount, $2,000 to $5,000. Let's say you do 5 of those and you get $5,000. 4 of those deals and you get $5,000 profit per wholesale deal. 4 deals times $5,000 is $20,000. $20,000 is a good amount of cash that you can get started with the buy and hold strategy if you want to implement that. I just want to make sure you don't get stuck in the wholesaling rut. And what do I mean by that? I have a lot of wholesaler friends, I said that earlier, in which they just treat it as a business. So you might say, yeah, that's great. I aspire to do the same. But they never take the leap into buy and hold. They stay stuck in that rut of just wholesaling. So they're always trading their time for dollars. There's nothing wrong with earned income. I do earn income. Me for doing speaking engagements is earned income. Me consulting someone one-on-one, that's earned income. I have no problems with earned income, okay? I'm not that guy that says, no, I'm only gonna get passive income so I can have an umbrella drink and bask in the sun. No, that's not the case. You should have multiple prongs to your income. You should have business income, that could be your wholesaling. You can have earned income, that's if you're doing it as self-employed, that could be wholesaling as well, but also passive income. And that's through your buy and hold strategy, okay? But I don't want you to get stuck and just doing wholesaling. So just keep that in mind. With every 4 deals you do or 3 deals you do, save those proceeds and reinvest into your buy and hold strategy. Okay? Excellent. So let's continue to move forward. So minimal risk is involved in wholesaling. So I get this question a lot. Do I need to create an LLC for wholesaling? You can if you choose to, but I always say CYA, consult your local attorney, because every real estate law is different, and I don't know every real estate law in every state, but many people do incorporate an LLC and use that LLC to get a property under contract, and then they sign their contract. But is it a requirement? No, it's not. And this is a disclaimer I like to say too, or maybe challenge you what you're thinking. Because I get people who say, hey, Juan Pablo, what entity should I form? What entity should I form? I hear that question often. And of course, I'm not an attorney. So I can't advise you on legal matters, okay? Especially entity formation in states I've never invested in. So just keep that in mind. But I just say, well, why are you so focused on incorporating a business and you didn't even generate $1 yet? You know, try to operate a business and get money and profits from a business, and then consider using the proceeds that you profited from that business to get counsel to incorporate the entity. And that's the process that I take. I'll just see if it's viable. I'll say, you know what, this is a sole proprietorship. Let me see if I can make $1 off of this, see if it's a viable concept. Oh wow, I made $1,000. Oh wow, I made $5,000 on my first wholesaling deal. You know what, I can use that $5,000 to seek legal counsel, to hire an attorney. Oh, I can use that $5,000 now to incorporate an entity. You follow? So that's the step I want you to take, okay? But always CYA. Focus on getting business first and then protecting your business later. But not later meaning years later, meaning after your first deal, okay, it's viable. I'm gonna protect this thing now. So that's the information I want to provide you, especially with the minimum risk involved. And there's minimal risk involved for wholesaling because you're not really doing the repairs. You're not buying a property that can potentially be a lemon. You're not buying a property in which it's in a bad area and the tenants might move out. So it's minimum risk. The only thing you're doing is you're not even really doing major cash flow analysis here. Okay, as an investor, you got to have a slightly higher business acumen to do buy and hold investor, to be a buy and hold investor. But as a wholesaler, it's less. And not to throw any shade on wholesaling. If you do wholesaling now, I'm not trying to say, oh, you're a wholesaler, so you're dumber than a buy and hold. But that's not what I'm saying. What all I'm saying is, generally, the analysis is simpler than buy and hold strategy. Even flipping strategy is more simpler than flipping, right? Flipping, you gotta line by line check all the repairs. You gotta coordinate projects with teams. You know, I got my plumber over here, got my painter over here. I gotta make sure they're working on the project, you know, in sequential order, because you don't want someone to do flooring and then paint. That'll be idiotic, because if they paint, they get paint on the floor you just got done. So you gotta make sure things are done in sequential order. But with wholesaling, it's so much simpler. This is the main strategy for wholesaling. You ready for it? Buy low, sell high. That's it. That's it. You get a property under contract with a motivated seller and just see if some other investor will buy it at a higher price than what you got under contract for. And it's minimal risk because you have a due diligence period in which you could back out the deal. So if you get the property under contract and it's been under contract for about 30 days and you weren't able to assign it to another end buyer or work, which you should, with another wholesaler who has a bigger buyers list than you, and let's say during a full 30 days of you marketing your contract, hey, do you want it, buyer? Hey, do you want a buyer? Hey, wholesaler, do you know any buyers who wants this deal? In 30 days you're unsuccessful, then you just tell the motivated seller, hey, we had a due diligence period of 30 days. I just decided based upon my due diligence period, I didn't want to move forward with buying it. No harm, no foul. And you just give up the contract. Meaning you just say, hey, it expired. I didn't want to move forward. And you put that in your contract, a due diligence period. Again, if you need assistance with that, reach out to your attorney to make sure your contracts are strong. Okay, and we do have templates and stuff like that we use for real estate investing. Just check out our resources for more information. So very minimal risk. So the money that is required is called consideration. And oftentimes wholesalers just put $10 down as a consideration. So it's not costly at all. Consideration meaning, hey, Mr. Seller, I would like to buy your property. Let's get under contract. I put $10 down as a consideration. It's kind of like hand money that you use for buy and hold strategy, but hand money is normally $1,000, no more than $2,000, by the way. Just put that in there. See, I told you you should have watched this. That's for buy and hold. No more than $2,000, but that's how much I typically put down for buy and hold. But for wholesaling, you can put $10. Again, you're working with a motivated seller, which is easy. When you do buy and hold strategy and you're working with a seller, that seller can have a higher business acumen. Why? Because they're a commercial property owner. They probably bought this property years ago, did the cash flow analysis and so forth. So they're a bit more savvy. So you can't say, hey, let me get this 10-unit apartment building under contract for $10, you know, as my hand money, earnest money deposit, consideration. It's like, get out of here, man. I can't take you seriously. But if you're doing this with a motivated seller for single family, they might not be real estate investors. Again, back to the Sally scenario, she inherited a property. She's facing a divorce. She has to get rid of it. She got another job in California. She can't afford 2 housing payments. She got laid off. Whatever the case may be, she probably didn't obtain that property doing cash flow analysis and took this course and so forth. Okay, so you can negotiate and get by with a $10 consideration. Okay. All right, and I said expect somewhere in the range of $2,000 to $5,000, but I know some wholesalers who got paid as high as $20,000 on a deal. Okay, especially if you know great negotiation, if you are a huge proponent of negotiation and salesmanship skills, you can definitely push the envelope and get more for your wholesaling proceeds. But it is predicated upon your skill set. If you're able to negotiate and sell, negotiate with motivated sellers and the end buyer, and also sell the motivated seller and the end buyer, you can make a bigger profit. So if you say, all right, Juan Pablo, I want to get started in wholesaling, because to be honest with you, I don't have the credit, I don't have the cash. And I have to say, okay, that's excellent. But to be honest with you, make sure you have your negotiation skills and salesmanship skills on point. Okay? There's many books out there, there's many courses out there. I have some of that information that I recommend in the resources, so you can check it out. But I want you to go above and beyond on how to negotiate and how to sell both parties, okay, the seller and the end buyer. And is it fraudulent misrepresentation, meaning, hey, if I get the property under contract, let's say it's in my name, Juan Pablo, and I assign it to Joe Blow, am I being fraudulent because I'm misrepresenting that I'm buying it, but I actually assign my contract to Joe Blow? No, not at all. The motivated seller does not care. Only thing the motivated seller cares about is what? Selling it. Why? Because they're motivated. Imagine if you inherit a property and you have no clue about how to be a landlord, property manage, and tenants and screening and all that stuff. It's a headache for you. You just care about selling it. Now, if Juan Pablo is in association with Joe Blow and I sign it to Joe Blow, the motivated seller does not care. Now, Juan Pablo signs a contract to End Buyer LLC, which is the entity. The buyer, the motivated seller does not care. Period. They just want to get this problem property off their hands. Okay. Now, do you have to have a real estate license, as I mentioned earlier? Not at all. Now, every state is different in regard to closing, but it's up to you to do your due diligence to see what type of closing is necessary. But you don't have to have a license to do this, okay? You're getting the property under contract, meaning you're buying it. That's perfectly legal to buy properties, by the way. And you're just assigning the contract. So if you have that in your contract, that this particular contract can be assignable, then you're not breaking the law. And you don't need to have a license to do so, okay? And I love to work with wholesalers. I found great deals with wholesalers. I like working with wholesalers as well as real estate agents. I like to work with anyone who's finding me deals, pretty much. If they're spending their time finding me a good deal that will add passive income, cash flow to afford my lifestyle, then you're going to be my best friend. So I like wholesalers in particular because they have the mindset of an investor. If you're a wholesaler and you're working with an end buyer who's a buy and hold investor, take your level of analysis to the next level in comparison to a real estate agent by itemizing like all the expense. Because a real estate agent, they can tell you the property and give you comps, but a wholesaler should be able to say, hey, this property's a good deal. It's $20,000 in rehab, and this is how I break it down. The roof needs some repairs, that's $5,000. You need updates on the plumbing, that's $2,000. Electrical needs updated as well, that's $3,000. Plus, you might want to add value by adding a deck and central air, that's $7,000 total. So a wholesaler, if you're listening to this, you should really itemize the repairs needed, provide the end buyer with comps, make it somewhat of a no-brainer. So of course the end buyer has to perform his or her own due diligence, of course, but you should make it easier for that individual. Okay, so that's why I like working with wholesalers, because the wholesalers that I work with personally, they do a big brunt of the analysis for me. Of course, I fact check it, do my own feasibility studies and due diligence, but they give me great insight into property ahead of time by itemizing every expense, tell me the cash flow, the rent I can receive, comps, the whole 9 yards. So make sure you do that as well. Okay, and who do wholesalers wholesale their deals to? As I mentioned earlier, buy and hold investors and flippers. Okay, those are pretty much the people who buy deals from wholesalers. And have you ever noticed so far, a wholesaler has to be great at two things: networking and marketing. Okay, so those are pretty much the expenses you have to pay for. Your marketing expenses, whether it's a yellow letter, whether it's a bandit sign, and so forth, you have to pay for that. And networking, if you're going to networking events like your local real estate investment group, as I mentioned in several videos before, there might be a membership involved and so forth. It's up to you to decide how your money is spent, but you have to be a genius at those two activities: networking and marketing. That's the gist of your job. And those skill sets, what did I say the skill sets were again? Negotiating and sales. You have to be great at those as well if you're bringing the time to the table. So as I said before, you got to bring something of value to the table. You can't expect to say, hey, I want to get started in real estate, but I have no credit, no cash, and no time. Time, again, including the networking, marketing, negotiating, sales, the business acumen. That's why I say it's all under time. Okay, if you don't bring none of that to the table, then it's far-fetched for you to get started in real estate investing. Okay, so you always got to work on yourself and your own personal skill sets. Okay, all right, guys. So keep in mind, wholesaling is a means to the end, but not the end. Okay, get started in real estate using the wholesaling strategy. Close on about 3 to 4 deals, and then you're saving those funds. You're not just going out there and say, oh, I'm gonna buy a new chain for my wholesale deal. Oh, I'm gonna take a nice vacation, which most people do. That's why they keep wholesaling as a business. But I'm not advising you to do that. Okay, I'm advising you to reinvest those earnings. That's one of our principles here at 100% Finance, and I want you to buy into that principle as well, that mindset. You close a few deals and you realize it's only seed money. I'm only going to use this proceeds as seeds to plant it or to invest it into my buy and hold strategy. Okay, so you can still wholesale part-time, as I mentioned, to finance your down payment money, to repair your credit and so forth. But at the end of the day, you're just reinvesting it, because the end goal is to obtain cash flow through the buy and hold strategy, which you will. All right, excellent, guys. Thank you so much for your time. And stay tuned for the next video. I'm out. Peace.